What is up, everyone? Welcome to my super late wrap-up for October and November TBR video. And yeah, this is my first video in a few weeks. I've not really been in the video making mood, unfortunately, but hopefully it comes back to me within the next few weeks. So the three big things that I want to read the rest of this month are The Grace of Kings. This is my Discord buddy read, which I will be reading and talking about with on my Discord and in a live show with Jolene Reads. And yeah, this book I literally know nothing about. And funny story, I read the description to this book like a few months ago, and then I was reading the description to like a lot of other books. And I recall reading the description of another book. And in my book haul video, when I talk about this book, I'm describing the complete wrong book. So I'm just going to go in totally blind. I have no idea anything about this book. And I'm going to start reading this week, hopefully. And I can't remember the last time I went into a book knowing like literally nothing about it other than the name of the book. Maybe Aragon in high school. Like I'm trying to think, or well, I guess I read that in middle school at first, but yeah, it's been a long time. And I don't even recall anyone talking about this book really, other than Charmaine telling me that my synopsis for this book was completely incorrect. I literally don't remember anything. So yeah, Grace of Kings. Am I excited for this? I mean, I'm excited to talk to you guys about this, but I'm not excited because of the synopsis. Second big TBR thing that I want to read the rest of this month is The Fall of Babel, and I'm a little bit through, maybe like a quarter of the way through, done with part one. I'm liking it so far. Obviously, the Books of Babel series is something I highly recommend to just about anyone, and the themes, the world are both very interesting. The world is very unique. There's a tower and there's different levels, and there's kind of like a unique political situation on all the levels, and all the levels have like some good things about them and some bad things about them in terms of like what type of like political system and or society should we live in. And we're on a new level for part one of this last book, and it was interesting. I can't really talk too much about it, but I like this new level, and the character that was in this level was also an interesting character to follow, and we're spending more time with this character. And yeah, I'm just excited to see how all of this wraps up. I haven't loved it so far, but you know, Book 3 was my favorite book of the year, so Book 4, high hopes that this will pull it together and stick the landing. The next book that I have to read, Jade War. This might go a little bit into December because Jade Legacy comes out on December 5th, I think. So yeah, this is book 2 in a 3-book trilogy. But book 1 of the series, I just kept reading. I could not put it down. To me, maybe because I read it all in one day, more or less, because of that, I thought it was fast-paced, but people are telling me that the first book was not fast-paced. Well, whatever. I think it's like average pacing, a lot of, family, inner city, political intrigue type stuff. This is a mafia story, so there's, mafia families, and they have control of the city, more or less, in one way or another. So yeah, I thought that was great. I'm not like really a lover of mafia theme stories. Like I haven't seen The Godfather, I haven't watched The Sopranos. It just never like stood out to me as interesting. But after reading Jade City, I definitely see the appeal, certainly, and maybe I'll have to dive more into that genre of like TV show and movie as well. And yeah, so there should be a live show for this coming in early December with some folks, and we did a live show for Jade City on Kate, the Almost Book Doctor's channel, and that was great. That was fun. Anyway, Jade City I read in October, which I already talked about basically, and yeah, I love the characters, love the story, love the book. Check out the live show if you feel so inclined, especially if you want spoiler discussion, because most of it was spoiler discussion. Anyway, wrap up time. So Jade City, obviously. Legion by Brandon Sanderson. This was the October pick that Pete from Ponderings of Pete picked Wow, that was a lot of P's. Peter Piper picked a peck. I can't talk. So yeah, this is by Brandon Sanderson, who I obviously love. This was 3 short stories, and basically there's this guy named Stephen Leeds, and he is very wealthy, well off, lives in a mansion, and he produces different aspects, which are basically hallucinations that only he can see that can help him do tasks. So, one of the aspects that Stephen talks to the most is able to kind of like read body language and tell if people are lying. So, that person's always with him, and she's like, oh, this person's full of crap. And then there's one that knows a lot about history and, the world, very kind of like well read on basically everything. So that person's with him a lot. Then there's one that's a bodyguard, which, having a hallucination as a bodyguard is obviously somewhat of a problem because they can't actually defend you because they're a hallucination. But they can look around and be like, hey, like, this person is carrying a gun, for example. So it's maybe less useful than an actual bodyguard, but it's more useful than you might think at first glance. And Stephen has just a ton of these aspects that he can use at various times. And yeah, very interesting concept. These 3 novellas in here are kind of like mysteries to solve. There's definitely a lot of the world to figure out, both in terms of what's going on around Stephen and what is going on within Stephen and within his brain, and like how do these aspects exist, and like everything. I'll let you guys figure it out, but if you like mysteries, I think you'll like this book. And if you like psychological thrillers, I don't know if I would call this a thriller, but it's like psychological mystery. I don't know, but yeah, definitely solid. The novellas get better as we go on. Like, the first one wasn't all that interesting to me, but I would stick with it after the first one because I think it gets more interesting. And somehow Sanderson has a Sanderlanche in the 3rd novella, which I didn't know Sanderlanches were possible in novellas. Actually, I did know that. The Emperor's Soul is very good. I just love that novella, and there is a good climax in that one as well. But yes, Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds by Brandon Sanderson. Next, An Indigenous People's History of the United States. This one, definitely good intro stuff to learn about American history as it relates to Indigenous people, which is something that I knew very little about. Now, as someone who's talked about a people's history of the United States, I'm familiar with just the general critique that any book like this that focuses on a different sort of class that regular history doesn't focus on. I'm familiar with like the sort of critiques that come my way, at least. The first one, just generally, they'll claim it's revisionist history. Now, revisionist history is not by definition good or bad. It's just history being added to and or corrected and or given more context. So we have to ask ourselves, like, for example, in this book, is it good that we're focusing more on Native American history within the field of study of history more broadly? And my answer is yes. Native American history is something that we barely talk about, and we oftentimes, at least in some school curriculums that I've been made aware of, there's a preference to overly focus on the mythologies within history that were generally taught. So, like, a big example when it comes to Native American history is the sort of fetishization of someone like Christopher Columbus. Obviously, he has his own holiday, and throughout my childhood, he was generally celebrated. Is that good? Well, I would argue no. Christopher Columbus was just a horrible person if you actually read his diaries and if you like learn about him. And even, you know, Spanish monarchs who are not known for being, you know, egalitarian people or whatever, they were pretty appalled by some of Columbus's activities. And, you know, he did just ethnic cleansing, for lack of a better term. Definitionally, that's what he did. And if you don't agree, I would recommend that you look up the term ethnic cleansing and look at what Christopher Columbus did. What they're perceiving it as is an attack on, American traditions. It's a tradition to celebrate Columbus Day. And it's arguing against these mythologies that they were probably taught as kids, and to some extent I was taught as a kid as well, that Christopher Columbus is good. The way we treated Native Americans was okay, which it was not. Definitely ethnic cleansing. Definitely, you could call a lot of aspects of it genocide, certainly. And, wanting to have history classes encompass these things, that's a good thing. So, yes, I do argue for revising history classes to be more accurate than they currently are. That is, if you want to say I'm promoting revisionist history, sure, but I'm promoting good and accurate revisionist history. And if you don't agree with that, don't say I'm promoting revisionist history, or don't say I'm promoting propaganda books, because look, propaganda, ooh, scary word, whatever. But you have to present what is propaganda, or why is the revisionist stuff in this book that I'm promoting, why is that bad? And the answer is they don't have an answer. Let me put it that way. So yeah, that was my general thoughts on this, and my general thoughts on talking about books in this general history genre of, educating people on a, less talked about historical part of the United States history. And this is a great place to start if you're in the US and want to learn more about the history of what actually has happened throughout the course of U.S. history and how that relates to Indigenous people. And I know Canada has some books about the history for Canadian Indigenous people. So if you don't care about the U.S. as much as you do Canada, maybe if you're Canadian, maybe you want to check out those books instead. Next, The Splinter King. I was very excited for this book. You guys know I love the Black Coast. This was my favorite book one book of a series, tied with Orconomics, that I've read this year. So big excitement for the sequel. And you know what? This fell short. It fell short. Obviously, my expectations might have been too high, but this book, first of all, way too many perspectives. I'm going to count them right now because I'm actually interested. Okay, so I believe there's 12 perspectives, which is probably more than just about anything. It's tied with Game of Thrones, maybe. And it did feel like too many, to me at least. And it was definitely a couple more than the first book. Now, going back to the first book, what are my thoughts on why I liked the first book? Basically, spoiler free, I liked the things that happened in, near, and around Black Keep, which is the location. And this book has less things happening in that location to those characters around there. And there's definitely a lot of middle book syndrome here, where nothing really gets resolved. And actually, it was shocking. I felt like some of the plot lines in this story just didn't have climaxes at all. There was a lot of build-up, no climax. So I think a lot of the groundwork laid here in The Splinter King could develop into good things for book 3. And yeah, I mean, you can stay tuned to hear my thoughts on that when this book 3 comes out in hopefully a year, maybe. But I would recommend reading book 1 and then waiting to read book 2 until book 3 is out. But there was still a lot of good things in this book. You got a lot of the characters that I loved in the first book. You've got the interesting world and some of the interesting social problems and social differences between cultures, leading to interesting conversations. And the dragons, the various types of dragons, really just a Galapagos land of dragons. And the baby dragons, watching the baby dragons grow up, that's just a bunch of fun. Oh, lastly, I finished The Great Hunt. I don't remember if I talked about that in my last wrap-up or not. I think I was halfway through, probably. But yeah, basically, The Great Hunt, book 2, Wheel of Time. I liked it more than book 1 of Wheel of Time. No, I have not seen the TV show yet. I've heard kind of mixed things. I've been pretty isolated from hearing stuff about it, but I should watch it. I should check it out. hopefully I like it. And oh man, I'm so behind on my Wheel of Time read along reading, but I will try to catch up in December, hopefully. I also have to read book 3 of Skyward, which is coming out this week, I think. Oh man, I'm just behind. This is what happens when you hardly read anything for a couple of weeks. The world just keeps spinning, and yeah, anyway, not to get too philosophical or whatever. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and join my Discord if you want to talk about the Jade City, Jade War, Jade Legacy, and or definitely Grace of Kings being talked about there, Wheel of Time being talked about there. Very exciting. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.